Okay, so you're looking to really boost your team's ability to, actually get things done.
Hmm.
And you sent over some excerpts from the 4 disciplines of execution
Right.
to help us unpack this challenge.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in, see what we can uncover in this deep dive.
Absolutely.
Seems like the book starts off by saying,
Yeah.
most of us struggle with execution, not because we aren't capable,
Right.
be- because we're constantly bombarded by urgent tasks.
Mhm.
It's like trying to walk a tightrope while juggling flaming torches.
Yeah.
Difficult, to say the least.
That's a very fitting analogy.
Yeah.
The authors actually use the image of a whirlwind of urgent daily tasks that keep us from focusing on what's truly important.
Mm-hmm.
And even further, the book's foreword by Clayton Christensen,
Oh,
who
why?
wrote The Innovator's Dilemma,
Right.
points out that even a brilliant mind like Andy Grove at Intel sometimes found it hard to bridge that gap between the strategic what and the how of execution.
That makes total sense. It's one thing to have the vision, but if you can't actually execute it, what's the point?
Right, exactly.
So tell me, how does this book actually help us bridge that gap?
Well, they introduce these 4 disciplines of execution, which we'll dig into.
Okay.
But they also bring up a fascinating concept.
Okay.
Variability in team performance.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about the models, the high-performing individuals or teams,
Uh,
and then the not-yets and the nevers. I love those labels.
I like that, yeah.
Essentially, what they are suggesting is that
Okay.
that inconsistency across a team impacts the overall results.
So even if you've got a couple of rock stars on your team, the variability from everyone else might be holding you back from reaching those ambitious goals.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a basketball team where one player scores all the points, but the rest of the team can't make a basket.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that unevenness makes it even harder to reach those goals. So let's dive into these 4 disciplines.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Absolutely. Hit me with it.
All right. So discipline 1 is focus on the wildly important.
Okay.
This is where they introduce this idea of a wildly important goal, or WIG.
Okay.
Essentially, it's that one goal that will make the biggest difference if achieved.
Okay, so it's not just any goal, but the one that's really going to move the needle.
Exactly.
So how do you determine your WIG? Does it have to be something earth-shattering?
It's not necessarily about being earth-shattering,
Okay.
but rather about laser focus.
Okay.
Think of it this way. You've got a magnifying glass, and the sun is beating down.
Okay.
If you spread out the sunlight,
Yeah.
it doesn't do much, right?
Right.
But focus those rays with the magnifying glass.
Yeah.
And you can start a fire.
Oh, okay.
That's what a WIG is all about. Concentrated effort on what matters most.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It really drives home the idea of less is more when it comes to focusing on what truly matters.
Right.
So once you've zeroed in on your WIG, what's the next step?
Well, that brings us to discipline 2.
Okay.
Act on the lead measures.
Okay.
This is where it gets really interesting because it shifts the focus from the overall goal to the actions that drive it.
Okay, I'm all ears.
The authors make a distinction between lag measures and lead measures.
Okay.
Lag measures are like looking in the rearview mirror.
Mm-hmm.
They tell you what happened in the past,
Yep.
like last quarter's sales figures or customer satisfaction scores.
Right.
Lead measures, on the other hand, are all about what you can influence now
Okay.
to drive those future outcomes.
Okay.
Think of them like the steering wheel guiding you towards your destination.
So if your WIG is to lose weight,
Uh-huh.
the lag measure would be the number on the scale.
Right.
But the lead measures would be the things you're doing each day to make that happen.
Yeah.
Like tracking calories or hitting the gym.
Exactly. It's about shifting your attention to those daily actions that are within your control. And here's the key. Those lead measures should be both predictive and influenceable.
Okay.
They need to have a direct impact on your WIG and be something you can actively control.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So it's not enough to just set a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Right.
You need to break it down into those actionable steps that will actually get you there.
Exactly. And that brings us to a question for you.
Okay.
Think about a recent project where execution was a challenge.
Okay.
What were some potential lead measures that could have made a difference? Were you tracking them?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Let's think about that for a moment.
Sure.
One project that immediately comes to mind is when we were trying to increase engagement on our social media channels.
Okay, yeah.
We had this big goal of reaching a certain number of followers and interactions.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back, I think we were so focused on those end results that we didn't pay enough attention to the daily actions that would actually drive them.
That's really common, actually.
Yeah.
It's like wanting to win a marathon without putting in the training miles.
Totally.
You gotta, you gotta do that work every day
Yeah.
to get to the finish line.
So in that case, some potential lead measures might have been things like the frequency of our posts, the quality of the content,
Right.
or even how often we were responding to comments and engaging with our followers.
Exactly. And the book talks about how focusing on those lead measures can increase your team's engagement and create a sense of winning even before you hit the ultimate goal.
Okay, so now we have our wildly important goal,
Right.
and we've identified the lead measures that will drive us towards it.
Yeah.
What's the next piece of the puzzle?
That brings us to discipline 3. Keep a compelling scoreboard.
Okay.
Now, when you hear scoreboard,
Yeah.
you might think of a complicated spreadsheet or some boring data report.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about here.
So it's not about drowning your team in data.
Yeah.
What kind of scoreboard are we talking about then?
Think about watching a sporting event. The scoreboard is simple,
Mm-hmm.
easy to understand,
Yeah.
and it tells you instantly who's winning and losing.
Right.
It creates a sense of excitement and urgency.
Yeah.
That's the kind of scoreboard we're talking about here.
So it's less about the raw numbers and more about creating a visual representation of the team's progress that everyone can understand and get excited about.
Exactly. Imagine you're working on a project to improve customer satisfaction.
Okay.
Instead of just tracking the overall score, your scoreboard could visually highlight things like the number of positive reviews,
Right.
the percentage of customers who recommend your product,
Uh-huh.
or the average response time to customer inquiries.
I see. So you're creating a visual story that everyone can follow, making it clear whether the team is winning or losing and what they need to do to improve.
Precisely.
Oh.
It's like having a giant thermometer that slowly fills up as you get closer to your goal.
Yeah.
It creates a sense of momentum and keeps everyone focused on the task at hand.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like turning the journey towards your goal into a game that everyone can participate in.
Exactly. And speaking of games,
Yeah.
have you ever noticed how differently people play when they're keeping score?
Oh, for sure.
It's the same is true in the workplace.
Totally.
Having that visual reminder of the team's progress and the lead measures they need to focus on can boost their engagement and motivation.
So it's not just about tracking progress.
Uh-huh.
It's about inspiring action and creating a sense of collective ownership.
You got it. And that leads us perfectly to discipline 4.
Okay.
Create a cadence of accountability.
Okay.
This is where the rubber really meets the road,
Okay.
where execution truly happens.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The core idea here is that you need regular,
Okay.
frequent meetings
Okay.
where the team comes together to hold each other accountable for making progress on the WIG.
Okay.
These meetings are called WIG sessions.
So it's not enough to just set goals,
Right.
track progress with a cool scoreboard,
Uh-huh.
and hope for the best. You need this regular rhythm of checking in
Right.
and making sure everyone is doing their part.
Exactly.
I
It's about building a culture of accountability
Well-
where everyone is invested in the team's success and takes ownership of their role in achieving it.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it like a weekly huddle where the team comes together to review the game plan,
Okay.
celebrate wins,
Yeah.
identify challenges,
Right.
and make commitments for the week ahead.
Sounds very collaborative and action-oriented.
It is.
Yeah.
And it helps to keep the WIG front and center,
Right.
cutting through the whirlwind of daily tasks and distractions.
Yeah. Okay.
The book emphasizes 3 key rules for effective WIG sessions.
Okay.
First, report on commitments made the previous week.
Okay.
Second, review the scoreboard, discussing both successes and challenges. And finally, and perhaps most importantly,
Okay.
make new commitments for the coming week.
Okay.
This commitment piece is really where the magic happens.
Okay. I can see how this commitment process would shift the focus from simply reporting on what's been done to proactively planning what will be done to move those lead measures forward.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's a subtle but powerful shift in mindset,
Yeah.
and it can really create a sense of ownership and accountability within the team.
Okay, I'm starting to get the big picture here.
Good.
You've got your wildly important goal.
Yes.
You're tracking progress with a compelling scoreboard.
Uh-huh.
And you're holding each other accountable through regular WIG sessions.
Right.
It sounds like a pretty solid recipe for execution success.
It is.
But I have a question.
Sure.
What happens if someone makes a commitment and then, life happens
Uh-huh.
and they don't deliver?
Right.
How do you address that in a way that's constructive and doesn't demoralize the team?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to the power of that compelling scoreboard.
Okay.
Remember, it's highly visible to everyone
Mm-hmm.
and transparently reflects the team's progress. This creates a natural sense of accountability
Right.
because it's hard to hide when you're the one holding the team back.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
So the scoreboard itself becomes a tool for accountability.
Right.
It takes the pressure off the leader to be the bad guy
Mm-hmm.
and creates a more shared sense of responsibility.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the beauty of the WIG session is that it provides a safe and supportive environment to discuss those challenges.
Okay.
It's not about pointing fingers or assigning blame.
Right.
It's about working together to find solutions and help each other stay on track. So rather than feeling like a punishment,
Yeah.
it becomes a collaborative problem-solving session.
That's a really interesting approach. It seems like it would foster a sense of trust and camaraderie within the team.
That's the idea. The authors argue that this kind of collaborative accountability is far more effective than traditional, top-down approaches.
Okay, I'm sold.
Okay.
But I'm also curious, have you seen any real-world examples of teams who have successfully implemented these principles?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The book is filled with inspiring examples of organizations, both large and small,
Okay.
that have used the 4 disciplines to achieve remarkable results.
Fantastic. But before we dive into those examples,
Okay.
I'd love to hear from our listener.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges you're facing when it comes to execution?
Right.
And how do these 4 disciplines resonate with your own experiences? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
So feel free to reach out and share your thoughts.
Absolutely. It's interesting you asked about real-world examples.
Yeah.
Because the book shares a story about a team at Town Park
Okay.
who were tasked with improving their valet service retrieval times.
Okay.
Imagine you're at a hotel,
Right.
ready to leave,
Uh-huh.
and you're waiting for your car.
Yeah.
Not a great experience.
Oh, I've definitely been there.
Right.
And it always seems to happen when you're in a hurry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this Town Park team,
Okay.
they knew they needed to improve their times,
Right.
but they were struggling to make consistent progress.
Wow.
It was a classic case of the whirlwind of daily tasks getting in the way of that important goal.
So what changed? How did they turn things around?
Well, they implemented the 4 disciplines,
Okay.
and that regular cadence of accountability through those weekly WIG sessions made a world of difference. They started tracking their retrieval times on a simple visual scoreboard.
Okay.
They made specific commitments to each other during their WIG sessions,
Uh-huh.
and they even came up with some creative solutions.
Okay.
In fact,
Yeah.
they got so committed to improving their score
Oh, wow.
that they actually tore down a wall in the parking garage to create a shortcut.
Wow. They literally broke down barriers to achieve their goal.
They did.
It's incredible what can happen when a team is truly focused and aligned.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think this example highlights a key point. The 4 disciplines aren't just about checking boxes
Right.
or following a rigid process.
Uh-huh.
It's about creating a culture
Okay.
where people are empowered to think creatively,
Mm-hmm.
take ownership,
Yeah.
and go above and beyond to achieve their goals.
So it's not just about doing the work.
Right.
It's about bringing passion and energy to the task at hand.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that brings us back to you, dear listener.
Yeah.
Think about your team.
Okay.
How could you tap into that passion and energy to drive execution on your most important goals?
It's so interesting how a seemingly simple framework can unlock so much potential.
It is.
But I do have to wonder, even with the best intentions and a clear plan,
Yeah.
what happens when you inevitably hit a roadblock?
Oh, yeah.
How do you adapt and keep moving forward?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because in the real world, nothing ever goes exactly according to plan.
Right.
The book actually addresses this head on
Okay.
and provides some guidance for navigating those inevitable challenges.
The key is to view obstacles not as failures,
Right.
but as opportunities to learn and adjust.
Okay, I like that mindset shift.
Right.
So it's about embracing a growth mindset, not a fixed one.
Precisely.
Right.
And the 4 disciplines can actually help you do that. Remember, you're tracking those lead measures.
Right.
And you've got that visual scoreboard.
Yeah.
So if you're not seeing the progress you expect, it's a signal to dig deeper,
Okay.
understand the root cause,
Right.
and make adjustments.
So it's about being flexible and responsive, not just rigidly sticking to the plan no matter what.
You got it.
Okay.
Sometimes that might mean tweaking your lead measures
Okay.
or even revisiting your wig altogether.
Right.
The key is to stay focused on the outcome you're trying to achieve and to use the data you're gathering to guide your decisions.
It makes me think of those GPS navigation systems.
Yes.
They're great for giving you the initial route, but they also reroute you when there's traffic or road closures.
Yeah.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
The 4 disciplines are like your GPS for execution.
Right.
They provide the framework and the guidance,
Okay.
but they also empower you to make adjustments along the way.
That's really helpful.
Hello.
It takes some of the pressure off,
Right.
knowing that you don't have to have all the answers up front.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this ability to adapt is especially important in today's fast-paced,
Right.
ever-changing world.
Yeah.
Things are moving so quickly
Yeah.
that if you're not constantly learning and adjusting,
Right.
you'll quickly fall behind.
So it's about embracing continuous improvement as a core value.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the 4 disciplines provide a structure for doing just that.
Okay, so we've talked about setting clear goals,
Right.
identifying the right lead measures,
Yeah.
creating a compelling scoreboard,
Yes.
holding each other accountable through wig sessions,
Right.
and even adapting to challenges.
Correct.
It's a pretty comprehensive framework.
It is.
But I'm curious about something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
That idea of sustaining momentum over time. It seems like it'd be easy to slip back into old habits once the initial excitement wears off.
You're right.
Yeah.
Maintaining that momentum is key.
Okay.
It's like going on a diet.
Okay.
You might lose weight initially,
Right.
but if you don't make those healthy habits stick,
Yeah.
you'll likely gain it all back.
Right. Right.
The same principle applies to execution.
Okay.
You need to build those habits and systems that will support long-term success.
So how do you do that? What are some of the secrets to making the 4 disciplines a sustainable part of your team's culture?
Well, one powerful tool the book introduces is the concept of the Execution Performance Score,
Okay.
or XPS.
XPS. Okay.
Think of it as a report card for your team's execution.
Okay.
It measures how well you're actually living the 4 disciplines, not just talking about them.
Okay. So it's like a way to hold yourselves accountable at a higher level.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it focuses on 4 key components.
Okay.
First, is the team consistently meeting for their wig sessions?
Right.
Are they establishing that cadence of accountability we talked about earlier?
Okay.
Second, are they making and crucially keeping those high-impact commitments that actually move those lead measures?
Okay.
Third, how well are those lead measures actually being executed?
Okay. I see how those first 3 components directly tie back to the 4 disciplines.
Uh-huh.
But what's the 4th one?
This one is all about the integrity of your scorekeeping.
Okay.
Are you accurately tracking those lead and lag measures?
Right.
Or are you estimating or fudging the numbers?
Oh, okay.
Because if the data isn't reliable,
Yeah.
the whole system falls apart.
It's like trying to navigate with a broken compass.
Right.
You might think you're heading in the right direction,
Uh-huh.
but you're likely to end up lost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this XPS score can be used at multiple levels.
Okay.
You can use it for the entire organization, for
Okay.
individual teams,
Right.
and even for leaders themselves.
Right.
It's a powerful tool for assessing how well everyone is embracing those principles of execution.
So it's not just about holding the frontline teams accountable.
Uh-huh.
It's about leadership modeling those behaviors as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The authors emphasize that leaders need to be the driving force behind this culture of execution.
Go.
And one of the most powerful things leaders can do is to make what they call second-level commitments.
Second-level commitments.
What are those? These are commitments that directly support the team's efforts to achieve their WIG.
Okay.
It's about leaders going beyond simply delegating tasks
Okay.
and instead taking ownership of removing roadblocks, providing resources,
Right.
or clarifying goals.
So instead of just telling the team to sell more widgets,
Right.
a leader might commit to improving the sales training program
Right.
or streamlining the ordering process.
Exactly.
It's about creating the conditions for the team to succeed.
Exactly. And it sends a powerful message to the team that the leader is invested in their success and willing to do whatever it takes to support them.
It's about shifting from a command and control leadership style to a more collaborative and empowering one.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this ties into another crucial aspect of sustaining execution, holding people accountable in a way that's respectful and motivating,
Okay.
not just about criticism or punishment.
Because nobody wants to feel like they're constantly being micromanaged or scrutinized.
Right.
It can be demoralizing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The book highlights the importance of leaders being consistent,
Okay.
authentic,
Mhm.
and respectful when holding people accountable.
Okay.
It's about creating a culture of feedback where people feel comfortable sharing their struggles
Right.
and receiving support from their leader and their peers.
So it's about creating a culture of psychological safety where people feel comfortable taking risks and being vulnerable?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's also about recognizing and celebrating wins.
Oh, for sure.
The book shares a great anecdote about how Dave Checketts,
Okay.
the former president of the New York Knicks,
What?
would handwrite thank you notes
Wow.
to every single employee after a successful season.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, he did.
And I bet those notes meant a lot to the people who received them.
Absolutely.
Such a simple gesture.
Right.
But it speaks volumes about his appreciation for their hard work and contribution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a powerful example of how small acts of recognition can go a long way in building morale and motivation.
So we've talked about setting clear goals,
Yes.
tracking progress, holding each other accountable,
Right.
adapting to challenges,
Yes.
and celebrating wins.
Correct.
It all seems so logical when you lay it out like that.
It is.
So why do you think so many organizations struggle with execution?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to a few things.
Okay.
First, it's hard to break old habits. We're so used to operating in that whirlwind of urgency,
Yeah.
reacting to the latest fire drill, that it takes a conscious effort to step back,
Okay.
prioritize, and focus on what truly matters.
It's like we're programmed to be in a constant state of reactivity rather than proactively planning and executing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And second, I think we often overestimate our ability to multitask.
Right.
We try to juggle too many priorities at once.
Yeah.
And as a result, nothing gets done well.
Yeah.
Remember that magnifying glass analogy?
Yeah.
Trying to focus on everything is like trying to start a fire with scattered sunlight.
Right.
It just doesn't work.
Right. You need that concentrated focus to create real impact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, I think there's sometimes a lack of discipline and follow-through.
Okay.
We set those ambitious goals, but we don't put in the consistent day in, day out effort required to achieve them.
Which is why that fourth discipline, creating that cadence of accountability through those WIG sessions, is so important.
Absolutely.
It's about building those habits of execution that lead to consistent long-term success.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the book highlights some fascinating examples of organizations that have successfully implemented these four disciplines, from hospitals to hotels to even the state of Georgia.
The state of Georgia.
Yes.
That's interesting.
So no, right?
I wouldn't think of a government agency as a hotbed of execution excellence.
Well, it turns out they were facing some serious challenges, including high rates of child fatalities and injuries.
Oh, wow.
They decided to implement the four disciplines.
Okay.
And they actually saw remarkable results.
Wow.
By focusing on a few key goals, identifying the right lead measures, and creating a culture of accountability, they were able to make significant progress in improving the lives of children in their state.
Wow, it's an inspiring example of how these principles can be applied in any setting, not just fast-paced businesses. It shows that the four disciplines are truly a universal framework for achieving goals, regardless of the industry or context.
I agree.
So, dear listener,
Yes.
what's your wildly important goal?
Right.
What's that one thing that would make the biggest difference in your world if you could achieve it?
Yeah, think about that.
Take a moment to reflect on that and think about how you could apply these four disciplines to bring it to life.
And remember, the four disciplines aren't about adding more work to your already overflowing plate.
Right.
They're about working smarter, not harder, by focusing your energy on the things that truly matter.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's not about doing more.
Right.
It's about doing the right things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of doing the right things,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on something.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the importance of setting a WIG
Right.
and aligning the team around it. But what are your thoughts on when it's time to actually change the WIG?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you just set a wig and then it's etched in stone forever, right?
Right. So when is the right time to shift gears and choose a new WIG? What are some of the signals that it might be time for a change?
Well, I would imagine one signal might be if the team has achieved the wig, if you've reached the mountaintop, it's time to find a new mountain to climb, right?
Exactly. You don't want to just keep running the same play even after you've scored a touchdown.
Right. Yeah.
You gotta, keep moving forward.
But what if you haven't achieved the WIG yet?
Yeah.
Are there times when it makes sense to abandon it before reaching the finish line?
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on the circumstances.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe if the landscape has shifted dramatically,
Uh-huh.
like if the market conditions have changed,
Right.
or if there's been a major disruption in your industry.
Yes, that's a great point.
Yeah.
If the original WIG is no longer relevant or achievable,
Yeah.
it makes sense to pivot and choose a new direction.
Or what if the team has lost faith in the WIG?
Right.
Maybe they no longer believe it's the right goal,
Mm.
or they don't feel like they have the resources to achieve it.
That's another important consideration.
Yeah.
Because if the team isn't bought into the WIG,
Right.
it's going to be very difficult to achieve it.
So it's about being attuned to the team's energy and morale
Uh-huh.
and being willing to adjust course if necessary.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think this highlights the importance of those regular WIG sessions.
Right.
They provide a forum for the team to not only report on progress, but also to raise concerns,
Yeah.
challenge assumptions,
Right.
and even suggest new directions.
So it's about creating a culture of open communication and feedback where everyone feels comfortable sharing their perspective.
Precisely.
Okay.
And it's about leaders being open to hearing those perspectives.
Yeah.
And being willing to adjust the plan as needed.
It's about striking that balance between staying focused on the goal
Uh-huh.
and being flexible enough to adapt to changing circumstances.
You got it.
Okay.
And this brings us back to the book.
Okay.
And something we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
That idea of leading with love.
Right.
Remember, the most successful execution, leaders genuinely care about the people they lead
Mm-hmm.
and are invested in their growth and development.
Yes, it's about creating a culture of psychological safety where people feel comfortable taking risks, admitting mistakes,
Right.
and asking for help.
Exactly.
Right.
And when people feel supported and valued,
Yeah.
they're more likely to be engaged,
Right.
motivated,
Right.
and committed to achieving the team's goals.
So it's not just about driving results.
Right.
It's about creating a positive and supportive work environment where people can thrive.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that brings us to another important question.
Okay.
How do you build that kind of culture within your team?
Right.
How do you create that sense of trust,
Yeah.
respect,
Yeah.
and camaraderie that will fuel execution success?
Ooh, that's a big question.
It is.
And I think it's one that deserves its own deep dive.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But before we go down that rabbit hole,
Okay.
let's come back to the book.
Okay.
And those 5 stages of behavior change that teams typically go through when implementing the 4 disciplines.
Right. We talked about the importance of getting clear on the WIG and the process itself.
Yeah,
But we didn't really delve into those stages.
exactly.
Yeah.
So let's take a closer look at those stages.
Okay.
Starting with getting clear.
Okay.
This is where the team really needs to understand the why behind the change
Okay.
and how it's all supposed to work.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
If people don't understand the rationale for the change or what's expected of them, they're going to be resistant.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And they share a great example in the book
Okay.
of a surgical nursing unit
Okay.
that was trying to reduce perioperative incidents.
Okay.
Those things that can go wrong during surgery.
Right.
The leader, Marilyn,
Okay.
felt super clear about the goal and the plan,
Hmm.
but she underestimated how challenging it would be to actually change behaviors in the midst of a chaotic operating room environment.
I can imagine.
Right.
It's one thing to talk about these principles in a meeting room.
Right.
It's another thing entirely to put them into practice when lives are literally on the line.
Right.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the second stage, launching.
Okay.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
Okay.
And the team starts actually implementing the 4 disciplines. And it's often met with a mix of excitement and apprehension.
Because change can be scary, even when it's positive change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the authors emphasize the importance of starting small,
Okay.
celebrating early wins,
Yeah.
and adjusting the plan as needed.
Mm-hmm.
It's about building momentum and confidence one step at a time.
So it's not about trying to do everything perfectly right out of the gate.
Right.
It's about embracing a continuous improvement mindset.
Okay.
And that leads to stage 3, adopting.
Okay.
This is where the team starts to see some real results, and they really start to buy into the process.
Okay.
They're becoming more engaged,
Yeah.
more accountable,
Right.
and more focused on that wig.
So the light bulbs are starting to go off.
Yeah.
People are seeing the value of the 4 disciplines and how they can actually make a difference.
Exactly. And they use a powerful example of Erasmus University Medical Center in the Netherlands,
Okay.
which was struggling with hospital-acquired infections.
Oh, wow.
A serious issue, especially for vulnerable patients.
Right?
They implemented the 4 disciplines
Okay.
with a laser focus on reducing infection rates to 0.
And did they succeed?
They did,
Wow.
within a matter of months.
Okay.
They saw a dramatic decrease in infections and patient deaths.
Oh, wow.
It's a powerful testament to the impact of these principles and how they can drive real, measurable improvements in even the most challenging environments. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It shows that the 4 disciplines aren't just about achieving goals. They're about saving lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the power of having a clear, shared purpose that everyone can rally behind.
So what about stage 4?
Okay.
What happens after that initial adoption phase?
That's where we get to optimizing.
Okay.
At this point, the team is really hitting their stride.
Okay.
They've mastered the fundamentals of the 4 disciplines,
Mm.
and now they're looking for ways to refine their processes and achieve even better results.
So it's about moving from good to great.
Exactly.
Okay.
They might experiment with different lead measures,
Okay.
tweak their scoreboard,
Mm.
or find new ways to collaborate and hold each other accountable.
Okay.
It's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It sounds like it's a never-ending journey of continuous improvement.
It is.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the final stage, habituating.
Okay.
This is where the 4 disciplines become so ingrained in the team's culture that they're no longer even thinking about them as a separate process.
Okay.
It's just how they work.
So it's like muscle memory for execution.
Uh-huh.
It becomes second nature.
Precisely.
Wow.
And they share a great quote from one of their clients.
Okay.
We don't even think of 4DX as a methodology anymore.
Wow.
It's just the way we execute.
That's a powerful testament to the impact of these principles.
It is.
But I'm also curious.
Sure.
The book talks a lot about the importance of leadership
Yes.
in driving and sustaining these changes.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the key characteristics of leaders who excel at execution?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you asked because the book delves into this in detail.
Okay.
They identify 4 crucial qualities that all great execution leaders seem to share.
Okay.
And the first one is courage.
Courage. That's interesting.
Yeah.
What role does courage play in execution?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
It takes real courage to say no to good ideas in order to focus on that one wildly important goal. It takes courage to set ambitious targets
Uh-huh.
and hold people accountable for achieving them.
Okay.
And it takes courage to challenge the status quo
Mm-hmm.
and push for real change.
I can see how those would all require a certain level of bravery.
Yes, they do.
What's the second characteristic?
The second one is integrity.
Okay.
And this goes beyond just being honest.
Okay.
It's about being consistent in your actions and your words.
Right.
Modeling the behaviors you expect of others,
Uh-huh.
and creating a culture of trust and transparency.
Because if people don't trust their leader, they're not going to be very motivated to follow them, right?
Exactly. And the third quality is humility.
Okay.
Great execution leaders are humble enough to recognize that they don't have all the answers.
Okay.
They're willing to listen to others,
Right.
learn from their mistakes,
Right.
and give credit where credit is due.
So it's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued and empowered to contribute their ideas.
Precisely.
Okay.
And finally,
Yeah.
the fourth and perhaps most surprising characteristic is love.
Love.
Yeah.
That seems a little out of place in a book about business execution.
I know, it sounds strange at first.
Yeah.
But the authors make a compelling case for it.
Okay.
They argue that the most successful execution leaders genuinely care about the people they lead.
Okay.
They're invested in their growth and development. They celebrate their wins.
Right.
And they support them through challenges.
Yeah.
They create a culture where people feel valued and appreciated,
Okay.
not just for their output, but for who they are as individuals.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
It suggests that execution isn't just about cold, hard results.
Right.
It's about creating a human connection that inspires people to do their best work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they share some really inspiring examples of leaders who embody these qualities.
Okay.
Like Dave Checketts with his handwritten thank you notes. Right.
and Julian Young, a restaurant owner,
Okay.
who makes a point of knowing every employee's name and personal story.
It's amazing how these small acts of kindness and connection can make such a big difference in building a culture of execution.
They really can.
Yeah.
And speaking of culture,
Yeah.
I think it's important to highlight one more key takeaway from the book.
Okay.
The 4 disciplines aren't just about achieving short-term wins.
Right.
They're about creating a lasting legacy of execution excellence.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
How do you turn these principles into something that permeates the entire organization and becomes part of its DNA?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
The book actually dives into this concept of building what they call a culture of execution.
Okay.
And it starts with leadership modeling the 4 disciplines in everything they do,
Okay.
from setting strategic priorities to running meetings to interacting with their teams.
So it's about walking the talk,
Exactly.
not just talking the talk.
Exactly.
And it's about creating a shared language and understanding of the 4 disciplines throughout the organization.
Oh.
Everyone needs to know what a WIG is, how to identify lead measures,
Right.
why scoreboards are important,
Yeah.
and how to participate in WIG sessions.
It sounds like it's about embedding these principles into the fabric of the company's operation.
Yes.
Making it part of the air they breathe.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's about celebrating and recognizing teams and individuals who excel at execution.
Okay.
Make it.
The source material mentions that the greatest impact of 40X is not simply the ability to produce breakthrough results, but the ability to sustain and even improve those results over a significant period of time.
Sure.
What habits or practices do you think are essential for building a culture of execution that delivers consistent long-term success?
That's a fantastic question, and it really gets to the heart of why execution is so challenging. It's not a one-time event, it's an ongoing process. One key habit I've observed in high-performing teams is relentless focus. It's so easy to get distracted by the latest shiny object or to try to tackle too many things at once.
Yeah.
But the organizations that consistently execute well are the ones that stay laser focused on their wildly important goals,
Right.
even when things get tough.
It's like that saying, if you chase 2 rabbits, you'll catch neither.
Exactly. And speaking of chasing rabbits,
Yeah.
another crucial habit is embracing a data-driven approach.
Okay.
It's not enough to just set goals and hope for the best.
Right.
You need to track your progress,
Mm-hmm.
analyze the data,
Yeah.
and make adjustments as needed.
Okay.
The 4 disciplines provide a great framework for this,
Mm-hmm.
but it's up to the leaders and the team to cultivate a culture of continuous improvement.
It's like having a GPS for your goals.
Yes.
It not only shows you where you are,
Right.
but also helps you course correct along the way.
Precisely. And to build on that analogy,
Okay.
imagine your team is on a road trip.
Okay.
You've got your destination in mind,
Okay.
your WIG, a map to guide you the 4 disciplines,
Right.
and a GPS to track your progress and provide feedback,
Okay.
your scoreboard and WIG sessions.
Mhm.
But what's equally important is the atmosphere inside the car.
You're talking about the team dynamics, the relationships, the energy.
Exactly. And I think one of the most important habits for sustaining execution is building a culture of trust and mutual accountability.
Okay.
Think about that road trip again.
Yeah.
If everyone in the car trusts each other,
Right.
feels comfortable speaking up,
Uh-huh.
and is committed to reaching the destination together,
Right.
the journey is going to be a lot smoother and more enjoyable.
It's like that feeling of knowing you've got each other's backs no matter what obstacles you encounter along the way.
Exactly. People need to feel safe to speak up,
Right.
to share their ideas, and
Mhm.
even to admit when they're struggling.
Yeah.
They also need to know that they'll be held accountable for their commitments,
Okay.
but in a way that's supportive and encouraging, not punitive.
It's about creating a culture where people feel empowered to do their best work, not because they're afraid of the consequences of failing, but because they're inspired to contribute to something bigger than themselves.
Well said. And when you can foster that kind of environment, execution becomes less of a chore and more of a shared mission.
I love that. It's about transforming execution from a burden into a source of energy and inspiration.
Precisely. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. Execution isn't just about achieving goals, it's about creating a culture where people can thrive, grow, and make a meaningful impact.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, from identifying your wildly important goals to creating a cadence of accountability to building a culture of trust and engagement. We've also explored the importance of leadership, data-driven decision-making, and continuous improvement.
It's been a fantastic discussion. I always enjoy diving deep into these topics and uncovering those nuggets of wisdom that can help people achieve their goals.
Me too. So to our listener, we encourage you to explore the 4DX framework further and see how you can apply these principles to your own work and life. Remember, execution is not just about achieving goals. It's about creating a legacy of success. And who knows, maybe someday we'll be reading about your team's incredible achievements in the next edition of the 4 Disciplines of Execution.
That would be fantastic. Until then, keep chasing those wildly important goals and remember we're all in this together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.